was owing to the sun and early-onset cataracts. On the day of his swearing-in, Albert, shaking hands and all, recited from memory a speech about the town's history. He did this from the top step of the town hall, a white 19th-century gingerbread that overlooked a flamboyant-filled piazza where hundreds of residents stood elbow to elbow in the afternoon sun. Ville-Rose was home to about 11,000 people, 5% of them wealthy or comfortable. The rest were poor, some dirt poor. Many were out of work, but some were farmers or fishermen, some both, or seasonal sugarcane workers. 20 miles south of the capital, and crammed between a stretch of the most unpredictable waters of the Caribbean Sea and an eroded Haitian mountain range, the town had a flower-shaped perimeter that from the mountains looked like the unfurling petals of a massive tropical rose. So the major road connecting the town to the sea became the stem and was called Avenue Pierrose, or Stemrose Avenue, with its many alleys and capillaries being called épines, or thorns. Albert Vincent's victory rally was held at the town centre, the ovule of the rose, across from Sainte Rose de Lima Cathedral, which had been repainted a deeper lilac for the inauguration. Albert offered his inaugural address while covering his hands with a black fedora that few had ever seen on his head. On the edge of the crowd, perched on Nozias' shoulder, Claire Limier-Lomé was wearing her pink muslin birthday dress, her plaited hair covered with tiny bow-shaped barrettes. At some point, Claire noticed that she and her father were standing next to a plump woman with a cherubic face framed with a long straight hairpiece. The woman was wearing black pants and a black blouse, and had a white hibiscus pinned behind her ear. She owned Ville-Rose's only fabric shop.
"Thank you for putting your trust in me,"
Albert Vincent now boomed into the crowd. The speech was at last winding down, nearly a half hour after he'd begun speaking. Nozias cupped his hands over his mouth as he whispered something in the fabric vendor's ear. It was obvious to Claire that her father had not really come to hear the mayor, but to see the fabric vendor. Later that same evening, the fabric vendor appeared at the shack near the end of Pierrose Avenue. Claire was expecting to be sent to a neighbor, while the fabric vendor stayed alone with her father. But Nozias had insisted that Claire pat her hair down with an old bristle brush, and that she straighten out the creases on the ruffled dress that she'd kept on all day, despite the heat and sun. Standing between Nozias's and Claire's cots in the middle of the shack, the fabric vendor asked Claire to twirl by the light of the kerosene lamp, which was in its usual place on the small table where Claire and Nozias sometimes ate their meals. The walls of the shack were covered with flaking yellowed copies of La Rosette, the town's newspaper, which had been glued to the wood long ago with manioc paste by Claire's mother. From where she was standing, Claire could see her own stretched-out shadow moving along with the others over the fading words. While twirling for the lady, Claire heard her father say,
"I am for correcting children, but I am not for whipping."
He looked down at Claire and paused. His voice cracked, and he jabbed his thumb into the middle of his palm as he continued.
"I am for keeping her clean, as you can see. She should, of course, continue with her schooling, be brought as soon as possible to a doctor when she's sick."
Still jabbing at his palm, after having now switched palms, he added,
"In turn, she would help with some cleaning both at home and at the shop."
Only then did Claire realize who this her was that they were talking about, and that her father was trying to give her away. Her legs suddenly felt like lead, and she stopped twirling, and as soon as she stopped, the fabric vendor turned to her father, her fake hair blocking half of her face. Nozias's eyes dropped from the fabric vendor's fancy hairpiece to her pricey open-toed sandals and red toenails.